When a star student became addicted to substances and stabbed her boyfriend, many wondered what kind of discipline she would face. But people were outraged when they later saw that the judge took a strange liking to her. I've covered a few cases on this channel where people are considered to be too rich for prison or they use their money to get out of it somehow. While you could argue that this case definitely has a hefty dose of that, this is the only time I've ever heard someone be called too bright for jail. The subject of today's story is a woman named Lavinia Woodward, a woman in the UK who came from a pretty nice upbringing. She grew up living with her mom in a £1 million villa in the Italian village of Sirtori, where she attended the nearby British School of Milan, where the courses can cost as much as £16,000 a year. Eventually, upon graduating in 2011, it came time to go off to get some higher education somewhere else. Lavinia wanted to get into medicine, specifically with a goal to cure heart disease. Given how smart she was, nobody doubted that she would have some sort of success in the field. She got into Oxford in the UK, where she went into studying medicine. In her pre-clinical test that all of the Oxford medical students take in their third year, she scored at the top of the entire class. It wasn't too long before she had her name appearing in articles published in various medical journals, such as the Annals of Thoracic Surgery, Hypertension, and the Journal of Physiology. All the while, Lavinia posted pictures on Facebook showing her wealthy, seemingly pretty happy life. She had pictures in designer outfits, hopping onto private jets, chilling out on yachts, and more. In one post, she wrote, "The best things in life are free. The second best things are very, very expensive." It seemed to the people around her that Lavinia didn't really do anything beyond sit in her room and study, though. While she had friends that she would talk to in class, people didn't really see her hanging out with anyone outside of school. She was called an introvert, with those around her saying that she mainly shut herself off into her room and studied. After living this lifestyle at the university for so long, it's clear that something eventually made her snap. Lavinia began drinking to an excess and got herself hooked on some hard drugs like cocaine and MDMA. Her friends on social media noticed that she was acting very strange, with one saying, "After she went to Oxford, she turned weird. She became all dark and gothic and it was obvious she was into drugs. She posted naked pictures of herself on Facebook, which was completely out of character for the girl I went to school with." Lavinia, really tossing out the good girl image, started posting pictures in tight-fitting, shiny, black, alternative-looking outfits, looking seductively into the camera. Her friends and family were really in for a shock when she started posting photos of herself onto her Facebook wall completely nude. She had gone to an event at the school's LGBTQ society where a bunch of students got naked and posed together for one reason or another. In the photo, Lavinia was seen sitting on a male student's lap with what looked like red handprints on her thighs and butt. Rumors began to spread that Lavinia was hooked on cocaine and in and out of rehab as she told people at school things about herself that many took as shocking. She told a friend at school that she was, quote, into some very kinky stuff, saying that she was into BDSM and had become quite a regular on the local kink scene. She bought herself a collection of expensive underwear and it became somewhat of a fetish for her to wear long fur coats with nothing but this underwear underneath. She went on to attend the Piers Gaveston Society Bash, a huge gathering where hundreds of the more wild Oxford students go to party. She bragged to friends about spending the whole night in what they called the orgy tent, which doesn't really need much explanation. By now, Lavinia had become a regular at most party scenes that you could imagine, everything from simple dress-up parties to romps at nightclubs and gay bars. Now, 24 years old, Lavinia went off to get herself a local boyfriend, a fellow student from Oxford. She wasn't fully honest with this boy, jumping through all sorts of hoops to hide her pesky cocaine and MDMA habits from him. She really crossed the line when she started to blame all of her symptoms on illness, even going as far as faking cancer to this boyfriend. A mutual friend of the two later spoke out and said, Lavinia told him she had cancer and was going to die, and that just turned out to be a cover for the drugs. She's a really smart medical student. She said it explained the volatile behavior and was making her lose weight. He took huge amounts of time off uni to be with her. Lavinia didn't only suffer from some health problems due to her drug habit, but she was also getting more and more violent over time as well, with that same friend saying, lots of people are really that scared of her. Eventually, seeing that things didn't really add up, this boyfriend confronted a doctor and asked about the cancer. He was devastated to hear that she didn't even have cancer in the first place. Lavinia told him that she actually came up with a whole charade to hide mental health problems that she was ashamed of. And somehow, this guy still decided to stay with her. However, this didn't last for too long. Eventually, she jumped on this guy and strangled him into unconsciousness as he was afraid to fight back, not wanting to look like the aggressor. After this, and seeing how out of control her drug binges really were, this boyfriend decided to leave. That gave Lavinia the opportunity to seek out her next victim. Lavinia decided to hop onto Tinder and give it a try. Being the looker she was and having the status she did, it didn't take too long for her to rack up a whole slew of matches. One of these matches was a guy named Thomas Fairclough, a man taking classes at Cambridge who was around her age. It was only a matter of time before Lavinia's drug habit started to rear its ugly head once again, and Thomas got to experience it firsthand. This would happen twice within 1 month, with her facing charges for assaulting him on both November 25th and December 12th of 2016. Regardless, though, Thomas decided to keep seeing her. Both of the pair were referred to as needy, with they themselves preferring to say that they were desperately in love. They continued dating for months until September 30th of 2017, when it would all really hit the fan. Thomas and Lavinia were getting it on one night when it slipped to Thomas that Lavinia had been drinking again. Given that, after the previous assault, she shouldn't really have been drinking or doing drugs, Thomas threatened to get a hold of her mother on Skype and tell her that she needs to give rehab another shot. Lavinia did not take this very well. She pushed the laptop away from Thomas and punched him in the face. Thomas, completely sober himself, decided to call the police. The operator could hear him saying, "I think my girlfriend has taken a lot of drugs," as she continued to beat him. Lavinia took out a bread knife and started swinging it around, cutting Thomas across his fingers and legs as he tried to stop her. She then lifted up the knife and plunged it down into his leg. While he panicked, she threw the laptop at him. Then she threw a glass and a jar at him as well for good measure. Then, in a completely erratic meltdown, she took the knife and cut herself with it as well. Shortly after, the police showed up and Lavinia was arrested. She was thrown into a holding cell where supposedly she tried to end her life that night. This was prevented and eventually she got out on bail. While she was out on bail, she got fired from her job after a customer recognized her from seeing her face in the news. This was when she was taken back to rehab again at the suggestion of her mother, spending a good month there. Afterwards, she was taken back to her mom's villa where she enjoyed the rich life once more, this time free from the burdens of school and supposedly from drugs as well. She was spotted carrying around a 1,000-pound Chanel bag, having fun around town shopping and getting her hair done. Meanwhile, the higher-ups at Christ Church, Oxford were so worried about what kind of impact that the arrest of their star student might have on the rest of the college that they started frantically emailing students not to worry. They told them that counseling would be available if needed. When it came time to go to court, the judge, Ian Pringle, took a liking to Lavinia immediately. She was charged with unlawful wounding with intent, but the judge wasn't too keen on giving her any sort of sentence. In fact, he gushed about her potential and spoke of how bright she was. While this charge would normally result in jail time, the judge debated on not sending her to jail at all whatsoever. In fact, he delayed the sentencing for months while he tried to find out what to do with her. He told the courts, "It seems to me that if this was a one-off, a complete one-off, to prevent this extraordinarily able young lady from not following her long-held desire to enter the profession she wishes to, would be a sentence which would be too severe." He then spoke to Lavinia, who wasn't at court due to being in Italy with her mother, saying, "What you did will never, I know, leave you, but it was pretty awful. And normally it would attract a custodial sentence, whether it is immediate or suspended." It was noted that Lavinia had assaulted Thomas twice in the past, and both she and her lawyers had hidden this from the courts. When this came out, it was stated that these charges would not be hidden and that they were to remain on file. Even so, they didn't really do anything to change the judge's outlook. He spoke of having pity for Lavinia, saying that she did have a problem with drinking and drugs, but said that there were other mitigating factors. He mainly blamed her troubled life and some abuse from an ex-boyfriend that he didn't go into too much detail about. It was found that her school would even allow her to return after a few months because, as they put it, she is that bright, speaking of how her articles had already been published in medical journals. However, the defense did say that Lavinia's dream of becoming a surgeon would now be nearly impossible because her conviction would need to be disclosed. After the hearing, it goes without saying that people weren't very happy. One of these people was a guy named Mark Brooks, the chairman for the Mankind Initiative, an organization that helps male victims of domestic abuse. He said that the judge taking this stance would only make it even harder for male victims to come forward, seeing that they wouldn't be taken seriously. He said, "The judge's comments are completely unacceptable and out of touch. This is a clear case of severe domestic abuse against a man, and the focus and sympathy should be with him. The judge seems to think that domestic abuse, when it is committed by a woman against a man, is not as serious as it rightly is when it is the other way around. This is wrong. It only serves to reinforce society's continuing empathy gap between male and female victims, and the message that the judge sends is that this is right. It also makes it harder for men to come forward and get help because many fear not being taken seriously when they do, just because they are a man. This does nothing to change that view." Before Lavinia's sentencing, she was given a restraining order, ordered to stay off of drugs, and forbidden from reoffending, risking a much harsher sentence if she did. For the time being, all she really had to do was wait. To hear the final verdict, Lavinia would have to come back out to England to attend court in person. She showed up looking fashionable in a black coat with her hair done up nicely, being photographed and caught on video as she showed up to court. Thomas Fairclough didn't attend the hearing, hoping to distance himself from the whole ordeal. Eventually, it came time for the sentencing, and the judge had not changed his stance one bit. He was still determined to let Lavinia walk free with as little ramifications as possible. He said that she was old enough and intelligent enough to realize that her drug habit, which he called overindulgence, would influence her behavior. But he pointed out that she had no prior jail time under her belt. This time, with Lavinia being in court in person, he told her, "I find that you were genuinely remorseful following this event, and although it is against your bail conditions, you contacted your partner to fully confess your guilt and deep sorrow at what had happened. While you are a highly intelligent individual, you had an immaturity about you which is not commensurate for someone of your age." He blamed her drinking and drugs on a very damaging previous relationship, seemingly taking the blame off of her entirely. He instead pointed out what he called her strong and unwavering determination when it came to going to rehab and ridding herself of an eating disorder. Lavinia's defense agreed, saying that she indeed worked hard on rehab while out on bail, but noted that she had given up on returning to Oxford, at least for the time being, citing the bad publicity. He said that she would consider getting a PhD abroad or searching for another university locally. He lamented that it was unfair that she couldn't even go clubbing anymore because she was too recognizable. He said, "She has effectively been in custody for 4 weeks. She has been drug tested every week," speaking of the rehab. The college dean, Professor Martin Percy, got on defense, saying, "We are concerned for the welfare of all our students, and it is clearly a matter of regret and sadness when any young person blights a promising career by committing a crime." Miss Woodward is not currently studying at Oxford, having voluntarily suspended her medical studies. The question of her future will now be decided by the university, which has procedures in place when a student is the subject of a criminal conviction. Finally, the judge handed down Lavinia's sentence. She was given a 10-month suspended sentence for 18 months, meaning that she would receive no jail time if she didn't reoffend within those 18 months for the stabbing of her boyfriend. Her charges were also downgraded from unlawful wounding with intent to without intent. With tears in her eyes, Lavinia mouthed thank you to the judge before leaving the courtroom immediately, leaving the building as quickly as possible. Regardless of everything that happened, Oxford wanted her back. They saw her as someone that was worth the risk to keep around. After all, they felt that she might end up winning a Nobel Prize one day, which would undoubtedly look pretty good on the school. They did say that she would have to face some sort of disciplinary procedure upon her return, but Lavinia seemed to refuse to come back until that stipulation was dropped. The judge's leniency on this case sparked outrage, to put it lightly. Mark Brooks was particularly outraged. Within only a short time, many complaints were filed against the judge, and a legal watchdog stated that they would be examining the judge's conduct, something confirmed by the Judicial Conduct Investigation Office themselves. People began to compare Lavinia's sentence with those of criminals who had committed very similar crimes near the area around the same time frame and pointed out the differences in the sentencing. For instance, in October of 2013, a man named Christopher Eady punched his victim in the face and only threatened him with a knife at a party. Even after writing a formal apology, he was sentenced to 21 months in prison. Another man, 27-year-old Fenton Burke, kicked a woman in the face in July of 2016. For this, he was given 6 years in prison, with the courts even stating, "Domestic offenses will not be tolerated in our communities." One more man, a man named Peter Edwards, was sentenced to 4 years and 3 months in jail after a very similar assault to Lavinia's, both striking and stabbing his partner very recently before her sentencing. It wasn't only men, though. A woman named Michaela Bruth was 19 years old when she was sentenced to prison for committing grievous bodily harm with intent after she kicked a woman in a nightclub. She didn't have the same home life as Lavinia, being raised by a couple of drug addicts and not having any higher education under her belt, which she feels led to her not receiving the same benefits. She said that it was a sign of how unfair and unequal the justice system really is, stating, "I'm not often shocked by what happens in the justice system, but this one really hit home. This lady picked up a knife and stabbed someone, yet her charge is one down from mine. Hers was causing grievous bodily harm without intent, while mine was with intent. Are you not intending to cause an injury when you pick up a knife and stab someone?" Even after getting off so lightly, Lavinia still wasn't content. She and her lawyers decided to try and get her suspended sentence reduced to a mere fine or conditional discharge, saying that the whole ordeal was really impacting her ability to find work. Her first appeal failed, so she tried again a second time. She failed this time as well. Unhappy with these results, she decided to give up on going back to Oxford entirely until her suspended sentence was over, putting off the disciplinary action as long as possible. In the meantime, Lavinia started dating a man named Philip Kagalovsky, the son of Konstantin Kagalovsky. He was none other than an extremely rich Russian oligarch who lived in a £60 million mansion in London. He was said to have been exiled from Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, being worth £1.2 billion after making a fortune in oil and banking. It was said that Lavinia and Philip opened up and ran a card printing business together in West London with this money. Lavinia went on to change her name on Facebook, with her friends saying that she was hoping everything would blow over and that people would eventually forget about her crime so that she could go back to school as normal. Meanwhile, she would continue to live with her rich boyfriend in their £1 million apartment together. Since then, she's been photographed taking jets all over the world and at fancy restaurants in Paris. Her friend told the news media, "She thinks this will all blow over and she can get back to being a doctor. She's so clever in some ways, it would be a good thing. But no one wants to be treated by someone who can't control their temper." Lavinia is convinced this will all just get forgotten. Lavinia and her boyfriend are having a fab time in London. They're a happy couple and they have everything anyone could ever want. It's a lifestyle she always hoped for. There's still no official verdict on whether she can be a doctor or not. After her suspended sentence has passed, she expects nobody will have a choice but to let her get back into medicine. It's her dream and she won't let it go. Nothing but medicine is worth her precious attention. Give it long enough, she hopes, apologize enough, and she'll gradually be let back into the fold. Lavinia has been accused of trying to set the terms as to when and how she will return to Oxford. She believes that her potential alone is enough to give her all of the bargaining power, feeling that Oxford will eventually drop their threats of disciplinary action if she makes it clear that she might not come back. However, as the years go on, it seems less and less likely that she's ever going to return. While some say that she has since broken up with her Russian boyfriend, that much is unclear. What is clear is from her own social media, like LinkedIn. This is where she states that, after the crime, she got a job being a business development manager in a digital out-of-home advertising agency. Then she worked as a startup consultant with a company called Square Roots Limited. It seems that now, though, she really did start working with medicine once more in the end, in the pharma field to be specific. She wrote on social media, "I'm happy to share that I'm starting a new position as Senior Product Development Producer at Beacon," where it seems that she has been working for almost 2 years as of the writing of this episode. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Just recently, I've started up a podcast with 4 of my friends called the NBR Podcast. If you like this channel, you might find that one interesting too. Just recently, I've set up a merch store as well, so if you're interested in getting some channel t-shirts, go ahead and check it out. I also really appreciate when people follow me on social media. I appreciate it even more when people follow me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, where you can get all the same benefits as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.